If you want.
How are we going to use it?
What you mean?
How are we going to make this?
Don't I make pickup?
Yeah, I know, but it's on this line. I don't know the 6.
Never mind. It's cool. Just go straight through.
It's cool.
Yeah, anybody. Well, listen. You can use that one if you want.
I didn't say it.
Come on.
Hold on.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. So tonight, inshallah, we're going to start from the beginning of Kitab al-Nikah. The beginning of Kitab al-Nikah, the book of marriage, which is not a book by itself. It's not a separate book. It's a chapter from within the chapters of the books of fiqh. The books of fiqh are broken down into sections. And it usually starts with the chapter of water, like Zad al-Mustaqni, which is on Mondays and Thursdays. Usually it starts with Kitab al-Miyah, water, chapter of Tahara, Wudu, Ghusl, right? Istinja. Then it moves to Kitab al-Salat, right? Kitab al-Siyam, Ramadan, fasting Ramadan, Kitab al-Hajj, Hajj, Jihad. Then it moves on to buying and selling, Kitab al-Buyur. And that's the second chapter, which is the second section of the book. So all of the sections from Tahara, water and wudu, up until the end of Kitab al-Jihad are considered worship, the chapters of worship, ibadat. Okay? And then the books move to another section. The next section is called Al-Mu'amalat, different dealings, which is generally buying and selling, the rules of buying and selling. And then in some place marriage inside of that section also. And some put marriage in a separate section. The third would be Al-Ankiha, which is the chapter of marriages. Included in that is divorce. And the fourth section of the book itself, this is one book we're talking about with different sections. The fourth section would be al-jinayat, capital punishments, crimes and the punishments that go along with the crime. So, firstly, class tonight is after Maghrib. Generally, it's going to be after Maghrib, but time is going to go back. So when time goes forward, when the time changes, the class is going to be the same time, inshallah, like 6:45, 7 o'clock. Right now, 6:45, 7 o'clock is after Maghrib, but when time goes back, 6:45, 7 o'clock is after Isha. Either way, the time is going to be the same, 6:45-ish, 7 o'clock, inshallah. The book itself is Minhaj al-Salikin by Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Sayyidi rahimahullah. Actually, it's two books we're going to use. We're going to use two books. The first book, and that's because this book, Minhaj al-Salikin, is very, very, is summarized. So there are a lot of issues that are not here. Okay? A lot of issues that are not here. So the book we're going to use, Akhsar al-Mukhtasara, is the book we've been using for like Kitab al-Salat and things like that. It's a lot more detailed. The problem with the marriage section for this book is not translated, but it's okay. So we're going to go through Akhsar al-Mukhtasara first, which is the supreme synopsis. Is translated as the supreme synopsis, right? But the marriage section is not translated. And then by the third class, we're going to use this book. So by the time we get to the third or the fourth class, when we go back to here, it'll make a lot more sense. Okay? So doesn't mean you can't read it, but we're not going to use it immediately. But by the third or fourth class, we're going to need Minhaj al-Salikin, inshallah. Firstly, before we start, we have to understand what is al-fiqh. Anybody? What is fiqh? Because this is a chapter from the books of fiqh. Meaning this is not a chapter from the books of Aqidah. What we discussing has nothing to do with what we believe in our hearts. in these chapters. Okay. So the question is, what is fiqh? Because it's a science by itself. But what does it contain? Anybody? Explanation? Your understanding of the text? Law? Comprehension?
Understanding like issues of the religion.
Understand ish. I don't know. Is this sisters over there? It is. We do got, huh? Rulings, Jade. We do got a sister for the mic for the sisters. Somebody got to hook it up. That long cord over there. It's a mic back there with an on and off. Well, I don't know if the mic in there. It might be in there. Tayyib. All right. If we say the science of, let's just say, what'd you say? The science of explanation, or the science of understanding, the science of law, the science of rulings. One got an on and off switch? Yeah, put that one on there. So, yeah, just plug it up. That real long cord, that brown one. Fiqh, and this is real basic. The science of fiqh has to do with the actions of the mukallaf, the actions of the person who is legally responsible in Islam, right? The person who is responsible, the person who is held accountable for their actions, which is who? In Islam, who is held accountable for their actions? They got to meet requirements, meaning they're not held. It's not a sin on them if they don't meet these requirements. Bismillah. Who, they bring in the mic, sisters. Who is legally responsible Islamically? Who is held responsible for their actions? That is sinful. They deserve Allah's punishment. They have a description. Okay. The Muslims, us. People that pass the age of puberty. Okay. Sahih. That's the mic, sisters. If y'all use it, you can turn it on. If y'all not using it, you can turn it off. So, but don't pull it too far. You don't want to pull it. Pull the equipment off, you know. Tell you, the person that is legally responsible Islamically, they're held accountable for their actions, right? Things are obligatory on them. He said that they have to reach the age of puberty. Reach. They have to reach the age of puberty, and they have to have their sanity. Meaning, if a person doesn't have their sane, they're not sane, they're not in their right state of mind, right? If a person hasn't reached the age of puberty, if a child has not reached the age of puberty, then the salat, for example, is not obligatory on them. If they don't pray, it's not a sin at that point. It doesn't mean we're not supposed to train them and groom them to start praying and start teaching them early. But what if they don't pray? What if you pray in Dhuhr and they walk off in the second rak'ah, right? Is it haram? Is it a sin on them for not praying? Not if they haven't reached the age of puberty. Everybody clear? Tayyib? That's the mukallaf, that they reach the age of puberty and that they have their sanity. They have to have both, not just one and not the other. Okay? So a person could have reached the age of puberty, but they don't have their sanity. In that case, as we say, the pen is lifted, right? As we say, the pen is lifted. They're not accountable for their actions. It doesn't mean we can't teach them and we don't want good for them and we don't try to steer them in the right direction. We're talking about what is the Islamic ruling. Everybody clear? So the person that is responsible legally under the Islamic law has to meet two requirements, right? Man, woman, old, young. They reach the age of puberty and they have their sanity. Tayyib. Now, once we get to that state, everything that we do has a hukum connected to it. And that's why we need this. How many sisters over there? Sisters, how many of y'all over there? Huh? 10? Damn, that might be 10. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here go 10 for them. I guess that could be for the brothers. That's for the sisters. Everything that we do has a hukum connected to it. Tayyib. From, as what they call Ahkam al-Khams, the 5 Islamic rulings that are on this paper here. Tayyib, get one of them. That's on this paper. So it's important to understand these rulings because as we go through the chapter of marriage, we use a lot of terms that are vague. We say stuff like, you can't do that. We're not supposed to do that. We say that's haram. But we need to know, what does that mean in Islam, not the translation. The translation of haram is what? Unlawful, sinful, or you shouldn't do it, forbidden, punishable. We're not talking about that. That's a translation of the word. We need to know, if you say something in Islam is wajib, if we say that, what does that mean? What does that equal? And that's why we got to know these. We're going to need these 5 for the whole book. If you can memorize them, alhamdulillah, you don't need to bring the paper. If you can't memorize them, bring the paper with you all the time. Because when it says you send, when it says it is recommended, when it says it is obligatory, when it says it's disliked, we need to know what it means. Again, these 5 rulings are connected to what? Connected to what? Any action that we do. This is when we do an action. For example, I ask you right now, what is the Islamic ruling in the Islamic law books? What is the ruling on sitting in a chair right now, just drinking a cup of tea? It has a ruling, something. It's one of these 5. Everybody clear? There's nothing that we do is just up in the air. Clear? Nothing that we do is just up in the air. Tayyib? Everybody clear? The idea? Sisters, if it's not clear, y'all got to let me know. Tayyib? Everything we do has some type of ruling connected to it. And when we start the book, they're gonna start using these terms. When they use these terms, we need to understand what it means Islamically. What does that equal? Because in this chapter of marriage, we got a lot of misunderstandings. Families are breaking up because we don't understand terminology. We got high expectations. We over expectate. We got things we think we're supposed to get, because that's how we talk. He's supposed to do this. She's supposed to do that. Right? Supposed to. What does supposed to mean in Islam? Because if the man is supposed to do something, it has to be from one of these 5. Right? We're going to get to it. I'm just saying, the way we talk, it has to equal one of these 5. You can't do that. What does that mean? Which one of these 5 does you can't do that fit in? You with me? Everybody clear? Tayyib. Tayyib. So these 5 rulings are connected to the actions, right? This is not a book of Aqidah. This is not a book about what a person believes. It's not about the belief. The books of fiqh are not based on what we believe. These are based on actions, right? Generally, the books that we study are the books from the madhab of Imam Ahmed, based on the country we were in and based on the part of the world, right? If we went to another part of the world, they might study the madhab of Imam Malik, rahimahullah. Which means there could be some room to differ in these issues, right? Some of these issues have different in them. What's the benefit of studying low-level books like this? These are introductory level books, right? They lay you a basic groundwork. It doesn't mean that everything in these books is 100%. There's no other way to do it. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean if you did it this way, then at least you know what you're doing and why you did it this way. Is it another way to do it? Possibly. Everybody clear? In the books of fiqh, that's how it works. Is it another way to do it? Possibly. There's a lot of room. And if there's not room for it, we'll know why. If there's no room to differ, that means it's what? If there's no room for differing, that means it was consensus on the issue. Ijma'. Everybody already agreed. You can't come and differ now. Everybody clear? Everybody already agrees on it. Nobody can come and differ. But if there's not ijma' on the issue, right, then there's going to be room to differ. And a lot of issues, y'all, we argue over issues a lot of times. we are arguing and we back and forth and we cutting each other off and we disassociating ourselves with people and families breaking up and all this kind of stuff over issues where there is room to differ. Our problem is we don't know that. We don't know it's room to differ. Okay? So these are the 5, and let's go through them quickly before we start because we got to understand what they mean. It says, number 1, al-wajib. Al-wajib, which is usually translated as either obligatory or sometimes it says compulsory. Right? What is it? It is something that Allah or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they commanded us to do that action, and they did not leave us a choice whether we can do it or not. Like what? What's an example of that? What have we been commanded to do, and we don't have the option whether we want to do it or not? We have to do it. Praying. Jay, time out. Huh, sisters? Some mic over there, y'all. Come on. Somebody, one person. I don't know. I heard all 10 of y'all, but I ain't hear nothing.
Praying.
Jay, y'all said the same thing. Said, oh, mashallah. All right, this is the problem. This is the problem with that, y'all. And I'm glad everybody said that. In these books, and this is another problem we got to fix all of this. We got to pay attention. In these books, wording is super, super important. Wording is almost, I'm not going to say it's everything, but wording is super important. It says, wajib, obligatory, is something that Allah or the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has commanded us to do without a choice. Like what? Y'all, everybody said praying. So every prayer is obligatory? Oh, you got to be specific. The 5 daily prayers are obligatory. You see the difference? It's not the same. That's part of our problem. Part of our problem, we be having discrepancies and we arguing and we misunderstand because of wording. That small thing make a huge difference. All the prayers are not obligatory, right? So we got to be specific. The prayers without a choice to pray or not are the 5 daily prayers. All right, the next part. The person who performs the obligatory act out of obedience to Allah is what? Rewarded. So the person who prays the 5 daily prayers, it's a reward for him, right? And the person who doesn't do it is deserving of Allah's punishment. So whoever doesn't pray the 5 daily prayers, they deserve to be what? They're deserving of Allah's punishment. Allah could punish them or Allah could forgive them. Allahu a'lam. But they deserve Allah's punishment. Based on what? Why are they deserving of Allah's punishment? It's a command. And what? It's a command. It's a command without choice, no option in doing it or not. And a person didn't do it. That means when we do something like that, when we do something that's not, when we don't do something that is obligatory, like pray the 5 daily prayers, we open ourselves up for punishment. That's what wajib means. So when we tell people, that's wajib, you got to do that. That's what you're telling them. This is what we telling the person when we say something is wajib. That they deserve, that they didn't do it, you're supposed to do that. That's wajib. You can't. That means they deserve to be punished by Allah. That means for me to say that, that means I know that thing that we're talking about, that action is obligatory. For me to say something is obligatory, I have to know. If I'm gonna tell somebody else it's obligatory, that means I already know the ruling on it, right? But that's the first one. The first 2, y'all, are commands. It's an order to do something, right? So the first one is obligatory. The second one is mandub. The word is mandub, which another word for mandub is translated as recommended or sunnah. Sunnah, right? What is something that is sunnah? It is something that Allah or the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded us to do. It's also a command. But this command in the sunnah, right, is what? It's with a choice. A person can do it or they don't have to do it. Like what? Let's keep it in the salat. Like what? The 2 sunnah prayers before Salat al-Fajr. Or the 2 sunnah prayers after Maghrib. Right? The rawatib. The 2 sunnahs after you make wudu. All of those that we call the sunnah prayers. If a person didn't pray any of them, right, they will fall under what? Recommended. And if they don't do them, it says the person who performs that recommended, whoever prays those 2 sunnah prayers before Salat al-Fajr out of obedience to Allah, then it's a reward for that person. But what if a person never prays the 2 sunnahs before Fajr? If they don't do it, the person who does not do it, who does not pray the 2 sunnahs before Fajr, is not deserving of Allah's punishment. Why? According to the definition. They left off something to command, but it's a choice in doing it. Everybody understand? Clear, sisters? It's got to be clear, because once we start the book, they're going to keep using these same 5 words over and over and over. These same 5 words are going to keep coming up. And we got to understand what it means when your husband is supposed to do something, as we say. He got to do this. Ain't he supposed to do this? What is it supposed to do means what out of these 5? It has to fall into one of these 5, y'all. Everybody clear? This is going to make it a whole lot, inshallah, to make it a whole lot easier of what we're supposed to be doing, as we say, and what we're not supposed to be doing. Tayyib, the first 2 were commands. The next 2 are prohibitions. What is a prohibition? Somebody explain in simple terms a prohibition. Something that you shouldn't do it. Something that should not be done. You should not be doing that. Now, when we say something like you should not be doing that, that falls into 2 categories. You should not be doing it in Islam could be under one of these, either number 3 or number 4. All right. If something is haram, this is the highest level of you're not supposed to be doing it, right? Something is haram, prohibited, impermissible, something that Allah or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has totally forbidden. Totally. There's no room to do it sometimes. You can do it, not do it sometimes. Right? Like what? Huh? Drinking alcohol or smoking or gambling or zina, sex outside of marriage. Sex when you're not married is one of the major sins. Zina is no time where we're authorized to make zina. Clear? Smoking, drinking, all those things are totally forbidden in Islam. There is no green light to disrespect the parents. Disrespecting the parents in Islam is totally forbidden. One of the major sins. We have no exception in Islam where we're allowed to disrespect our parents. And they're not Muslim. Islam didn't give us a green light to disrespect parents that are not Muslim. Everybody clear? So when a person does that, then that falls under the category of haram. It's totally forbidden in Islam. No choice, right? And if it's haram, then that equals the person who stays away from disrespecting their parents out of obedience to Allah. It's a reward for them. I'm not going to disrespect my parents. That's haram in Islam. We're not allowed to do that at all, right? And the person who does the thing that is impermissible or haram, right? If a person does do it, then they do what? They deserve Allah's punishment. Clear? Allah might forgive them, but they deserve Allah's punishment. We open ourselves up when we do something haram. We do something that's totally forbidden. That means we've opened up. We put the past that we deserve to be punished. So when we say something that's haram, right? And this is the point. We say as we all, the time we living in, right? Everybody knows everything. And if you look at the imams of the past, some of them, they out of shyness before Allah, they wouldn't even use the term haram. They wouldn't say it. They would say, I really wouldn't do that. They would use words that insinuate that they were saying it was haram. We say, man, that's haram. You can't do that. Right? That's what it means. That's what it equals. Haram doesn't just mean impermissible. That's the translation that's used. But it means that if a person, they went against the command or prohibition that they are not supposed to do at all. There's no time they're supposed to do it. And on top of that, they deserve Allah's punishment. Tayyib. Number 4, this is the lower level of something you shouldn't do. Right? Makruh, which is either disliked or hated. Again, it is something that Allah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has forbidden us from doing. Not totally forbidden, though. If it's not totally forbidden, that means a person has a what? A choice. And the things that are disliked, a person has a choice. But it's better to stay away from it. The best thing for the things that are disliked is to stay away from doing it. But if a person did it, then look at the next part. The person who stays away from these things out of obedience to Allah is a reward for him, right? The person who does the things that are disliked, right? They are not deserving of Allah's punishment. Clear? Why? Because they did something that in reality, it was a choice in doing it, even though it's better to stay away. And again, y'all, if you might want to put a note there. If it says, when it says it is deserving of Allah's punishment, that means that that thing is a sin to do it. You need a paper? You got another one? That's it? Ain't no more? You can take that one. If that's the case, then that means that the person, that is a sin along with it. So it's a sin. A person deserves the punishment of Allah, even though Allah could forgive the person. So the first two are what? Commands. One command is a full command. The other command has a choice in it. Number two. Number 3 and 4 are both prohibitions, things we shouldn't do. Number 3 is no way, shape, or form we could do it. Totally forbidden. Number 4, we shouldn't do it, but it's some room in there. We should stay away from it, but it's not totally forbidden. Clear? Tayyib. We're going to need these, y'all. If they're not clear, if it's not clear, it ain't no rush. But if it ain't, because you're going to need them, because it's going to come up. Again, the same words going to come up throughout the whole chapter. Really throughout all the books. If you come to Monday and Thursday class, the same words going to keep coming up. Through the books of fiqh, the same ahkam come up over and over, these same rulings. Tayyib. Number 5. If the first two, numbers 1 and 2, have a command connected to it, right? Number 3 and 4 have a prohibition connected to it. Number 5, which is mubah, it does not have a command or a prohibition connected to it. So Islamically, that's permissible. It's allowed. You can do that, no problem. So I ask you, what is the hukum? What's the ruling on right now? You're drinking a cup of tea. What's the ruling on sitting in a chair drinking a cup of tea from these 5? Say it's mubah. In order for something to be, and of course, y'all, in order for something to fall into any one of these categories, we need what? Proof. You need dalil to say it's obligatory. It's not just because the author of the book can just say, no, that's obligatory. No. There's dalil. There's proof, text, Quran, sunnah. This ayat proves this. This hadith proves this, right? Ijma', consensus of the salaf prove this, right? In order for it to go in any action that goes into any category has to have proof. So if it's mubah, if it's allowed, then as it says, it's permissible. Something that has been it has not been commanded, right? Nor has it been prohibited by Allah, the Prophet ﷺ. There's no command that you have to sit in the chair. There's nothing to say that you can't sit in the chair. We're talking about just normal sitting in the chair, walking down the street. You have to walk. In Islam, do you have to walk down the street or do you have to jog down the street? You could do either one, right? What's the hukum? What's the ruling on walking down the street as a Muslim, right? Everything we do has one of these 5 connected to it. That's the point, okay? We can say, what's the hukum? What's the rule on drinking with your left hand? I'm drinking with my right because sometimes the camera flips. But what's the rule on drinking with your left hand? It got to be one of these 5. What's the ruling on screaming at your wife? Sisters, what's the ruling on sisters? What's the ruling on screaming at your husband? You understand? All 5. He said number 3. You understand? Anything we do in this chapter is going to fall under one of these 5. If you're screaming at your husband, it has one of these 5 rulings connected to it. If you're screaming at your wife, one of these 5 rulings connected to it. Okay? Everybody understand? It has to. You got to understand because that's part of the chapter. It can't just be words we just reading by. No, that means something in Islam. They wrote these books like this intentionally. So the mubah, the things that are allowed, it says there is no reward or punishment connected to the action that is permissible. No reward connected to you sitting in the chair drinking tea, right? And there's no punishment connected to it. So it is, as they say, mubah. Any questions before we move on? The ones that is deserving of Allah's punishment, y'all, that means that you're sinful. A person is sinful. So in wajib, it says a person is deserving of Allah's punishment. That means if I didn't pray for all 5, that's a sin. And I deserve to be punished by Allah ta'ala, right? Haram, a person is rude and disrespectful to their parents, right? Getting drunk, gambling. A person does the haram, right? That means that it's a sin to do those things and they deserve Allah's punishment. Tayyib? Clear? Tayyib, we're going to move on. inshallah. So tonight we're going to start with not Minhaj al-Salikin, but again, the book Minhaj al-Salikin, The Path of the Wayfarer, is summarized, very summarized. So it's a lot of information that's not in there. So we're going to go through a more detailed book. Then when we go back to The Path of the Wayfarer, inshallah, Minhaj al-Salikin, it'll make more sense. Inshallah. طيب. قال المصنف رحمه الله كتاب النكاح. He says the first thing, and this comes after, again, this is the, in some, to some, this is the third section of the book of fiqh, or to some, this is the, or either way, it's the third section. طيب. First of all, even though it's not here in the text, the definition of nakaha, nikah, the word it comes from, the ulama, they explain that it can have two meanings. It can either mean the actual contract itself, right? Or it can mean the intercourse that a man has with his wife, right? It could be either one. طيب. It could be al-wat'u, or it could be the aqd. It could be the aqd nikah, or it could be the actual jima', the actual intercourse. طيب. In this section here, the first thing that he starts off, and understand this before we start, y'all. This is an introductory level book. The book that I'm reading from now, the Supreme Synopsis, is a classical book. These books are written a specific way. All right. Path of the Wayfarer is a modern book. It's not a classical book, so it's written a little different. Okay. What's the major difference? The major difference is these classical books are written with no reference to ayat and hadith in it. Why? Because these are ulama who write these books. These are not like regular people. Why would a scholar write a book with no, huh?
Something they know.
Because the scholar already knows? طيب, it's a beginner's book, and
We want people to understand.
Understand.
Understand. You don't want to
You don't want to pile on all that information. They want people to understand. طيب, that makes sense. That makes sense, sisters? They in this book, as you said, we're gonna go through. He's not gonna mention any hadith, any ayah. He's gonna tell you what it is. What one of these five, what you're supposed to do from one of these five. That's how it's gonna go. Everybody clear? The question is, why would they do something like that? Because in the next level, they're gonna repeat it. The next level book. Yeah, they are. You're a beginner. We all beginners. They just giving you a foundation. They just giving you a skeleton. They're not giving you a whole research paper. This is an introduction. Imagine a new Muslim comes, right? Sister takes shahada, right? And it's time to pray, right? Or brother takes shahada, it's time to pray, right? You tell them to do what when it's time to line up? Just follow me. Why? Because if you go any further than telling him just follow you, he ain't gonna understand anyway. You understand? These books are this is a level 1 book. All right. Somebody come in, they just took shahada, they never made wudu before. You go back there and you tell them what to do. You don't give them all the hadith from the Sahih al-Bukhari or Sahih Muslim connected to wudu. You say Bismillah. All right, take the water, wash your right hand up to I do this. You don't start running off Al-Thamaraat and Affan and start running off the hadith of, right? Because if you did it, they wouldn't understand anyway. And that's the assumption. This is just for you to get a picture. What are we talking about? What's the issue? Right? Taswir. Right? You get the idea of the issue and what's the ruling on it. The further you go, of course they have dalil, y'all. This is our deen. This is not like they're just shooting from the hip and making up stuff as they go along. Of course they have dalil. But we're not at that level book, and that's not how the scholars teach. They don't teach when you read these books like this that you compare and you back and forth. No, you go through, you understand the issue, and then you move to the next level. Once you master that, you move to the next level. طيب. The author rahimahullah says, يُسَنُّ مع شهوة لمن لم يخف زنا. لمن لم يخف الزنا. This is what he says. The first thing in Kitab al-Nikah, he says, yusannu. It is recommended for the person who has the desire of what? The opposite sex. A woman has a desire. Does she want to fulfill her desires? Or the man wants to fulfill his desires, right? Who is it recommended for? It says it's recommended, and he says for who? Everybody? Wording is important, y'all. Because if somebody come back and say, what's the rule on getting married? Pay attention. He says, yusannu ma'a shahwatin. It is recommended when a person has the desire for a woman, or the woman has a desire for a man, right? It says, and that desire, they don't fear that they're going to fall into zina. They don't fear they're going to just go have sex with somebody. Clear? Who is it recommended to get married for? Huh? The person who has a desire for the opposite sex, and they don't fear that they're going to go do something that's haram. They don't fear they're going to do something haram. They don't fear they're going to just go have sex with anybody because they want to fulfill their desire. Does everybody understand that? A person could be, they have the desire for the opposite sex, right? And then it could be a person that they feel like they're going to do something. One person has desire for the opposite sex, and they just like, man, I think I'm going to get married. It's time. And the other person like, man, I got to get married like now. Like people say, I might just marry my ex back. Right? Why? What's the pressure that the second person has? They fear they're going to fall into zina. Sisters, you with me? Clear? They're not the same people, y'all, and they don't get the same ruling. The first person is recommended for the person who doesn't fear zina. He says after that, وَيَجِبُ عَلَى مَنْ يَخَافُهُ. But it's obligatory for the person to get married who fears they get ready to fall into zina. Everybody clear? I hope that's clear. Because somebody say to you, what's the ruling on getting married? Well, it depends. People don't like that answer, y'all. That's another thing. People want you to give them a straight answer all the time. What's the hukum on getting married? It depends on the person, generally. It could be recommended. It could be obligatory. Well, what's the issue? Brother talking, sister talking about, man, she ready to go out here and commit zina. It's obligatory. She got to get married, like obligatory. If obligatory, that means it falls under number one, y'all wajib. Clear? You understand? The first person, they say they need to get married. They feel like they need to get married. They're going to fall. No, he said it's not like that. Not like they're going to fall into something, like they're going to go commit zina or anything. They're not going to have sex with anybody, but they think they're ready. Well, it's recommended that they go get married then. Everybody see how that applies? The five, you got to apply them. They apply in every situation. Allah Akbar. Saudi. Tayyib. Clear? Clear so far? Tayyib. And with that, this is why the ulama say that nikah can take either one of those five rulings on the paper. Either one of those five rulings on the paper, that marriage can, or the hukum, it could be one of those. If you say, what's the ruling on getting married? It depends. It could take either one of those five. Sorry. Can you grab them papers off the printer? I just printed out a couple more jobs. You did? Trizon. Sorry, y'all. He messed up. I think that's it. They should be coming out. Tayyib. So that's why they say the hukum al-nikah could fall into any one of those five, dependent. It could be recommended. It could be obligatory. When can nikah be haram on a person? Huh? When can nikah be haram on a person? When it's done improperly. What does that mean? We ain't get there yet. No, don't worry about that. We get there. We're going to get there, inshallah. When can nikah be haram? Yes. Jade, if it's forced, give me one a little clear, super clear. Give one to Jazakallah khair. Huh? Brother already maxed up. MashaAllah. Brother has 4 wives. If a man has 4 wives, can he take a 5th wife? That means for him it's what? Haram. So he said, what's the hukum in nikah? What's the ruling on a man getting married? Which type man we talking about? A man who has a desire, but he don't fear he's going to fall into zina? No. Or a man who has a desire and he fears he's going to fall into zina? Or likewise, a woman. A man, he already has 4 wives. Well, he can't get married. It's haram for him to marry more than 4 wives. You understand? That's why it depends. That's why they say it could take any of the 5 ahkam. Tayyib. Sisters, you with me? I hope y'all with me. Tayyib. Next, he moves to sifat al-zawja. The sifat of the wife. What should a man look for in a woman? Tayyib. And this is, if you think about it, the Sharia shows you that generally, y'all, the woman can see more, like physically now. Physically, generally, more of a man is exposed than a woman. Right? If y'all disagree, let me know. Generally, there's more of a man that's exposed than a woman.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Can you spell that word?
Which one?
Sifat?
Sifat?
Nah.
In Arabic?
Nah.
Sad, Fa, Alif, Ta. Open Ta, like regular Ta. Sifat. Allah Akbar. Sifat al-zawja. Tayyib. Generally, if you just take the physical, right? Generally, you can see a man's physical appearance. A woman could be covered and you might not know. For example, clearly, you might not know how much a woman weighs just by looking at her. But a man, you can look at his based on the clothing, right? And there's a couple things here when it comes to the sifat al-zawja. Some things that the woman generally is more covered and is not known than a man. Okay? We need to just, it's not something that's a secret, but sometimes you got to say stuff because just so we all on the same page. Yeah. He says, Yusannu nikahu wahidatin. He says, Yusan is recommended. What? It's recommended to do what? Marry one woman. It says recommended to take one wife, which means what? It says it's recommended to take one wife, which means? Huh?
No obligation or no prohibition.
Huh?
Meaning that taking the wife is not military.
Jade. All of that, it could mean all of that. I'm not saying I'm not negating any of it. It says it's recommended to take one wife, which they're saying is not what he's saying. What the author is saying is not recommended to take more than one. That's what the author is saying. A lot of women like this position. Let's make this clear. The ulama on this is not ijma, sisters. This is not consensus of the scholars that everybody says you should take one wife, right? Some, that's a discussion, but we're not here for khilafat and all that, right? We want to understand what the author is saying. Why is the author saying that it's recommended to take one wife? Huh?
Is it saying based on the ayah?
What's the ayah?
Marry two things important, you can't afford to marry one.
So why is the author saying it's recommended to take one? We just say it's based on the ayah. The ayah says marry 2, 3, or 4 also.
Recommended to take one, so you don't sin.
So you don't what?
So you don't fall into sin.
It's recommended to take one so you don't fall into sin. How? Fall into sin how?
By not being married and having sex with not married.
Recommended to take one, he's saying that it's not recommended to take more than one. So you're already married. So you're not falling into sin. Why are they saying that it's recommended to take one? Shay.
Because it's going to fulfill what you were saying, like about the 2 types of people.
La.
It's married.
Huh? Sisters, why? Why is it recommended? We need to understand this. Because if it's recommended, it doesn't mean it's saying it's recommended to take one, meaning you shouldn't take more than one. That's what they're saying.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wait, sit down.
Is it recommended because it's sunnah to be married, and if you're not married, then you could commit zina?
He's already married. He already has one wife, right?
So,
He should stop there. So you're saying because it was sunnah?
right.
He's married. He's already married. So he's practicing the sunnah of getting married already. But why just one? And the ayah says what, Sheikh? 2, 3, or 4? Huh? He says it's easier. It's a little more than that, fella.
Is it because if I say something like Khadija and didn't marry anyone after that?
MashaAllah. Nah. I heard one of the mashayikh say, I heard one of the scholars, he said, the sisters love this position here. They love this one here. It's a nice. But if I say something, he only married Khadija, he didn't marry when he had, you got to be like Khadija for him not to marry then. Like, you know what I'm saying? You got to be like Khadija. Do we know her full name? Know when she was born? How old was she? Why did he love her so much? What made him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not marry when he was married to Khadija? What was Khadija like? Who was she? What type of traits and character did she have? Right? You got to know that. If you like that, he might not take another wife. And you could be like that, and he might take another wife. Right? Like they say, the early men who say that one is recommended, they say because if a man takes more than one wife, he puts himself in a situation where he could possibly be unjust by taking 2. What was that? What was that? But pay attention. You gotta make the bayan. If he does that, sister, that's on him before Allah, Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's on the man, Yawm al-Qiyamah, before Allah. He has to stand before Allah. He did that. His wife not gonna be, he's gonna be standing. If he puts himself in that position, yes, the sister, she's so concerned about her husband, she doesn't want him to put himself in a position where he's gonna be unjust, right? Tayyib. He goes and does it anyway. That's on him before Allah. He's responsible for doing that. So the ulama who say that, and other scholars argue against them because, you know, the argument between, we're just going off the author. We're not going back and forth between positions. That's the reason. They say you put yourself in a position where you could be unjust. Well, now, could you be unjust to one? It's possible you can be unjust to one. So that's the argument, debate back and forth. Tell you. That's what they argue. That's the argument. The ayah says what? That's the argument. All that's part of the argument. All that's part of the debate. The meaning of the ayah, if a person, the other hadith that go with it. So it's a discussion. It's a discussion. Tayyib. It says the next one, hasiba. This is what? The description of the woman that you should be looking for. She should have, again. It says yusan. It is recommended for the woman that the man chooses to have these qualities. Recommended, not what? It's not obligatory for her to have these qualities. That's what it means. That number, you got to reuse the paper. It's recommended for her to have these qualities. That is only one, right? That she's hasiba, which is she has an honorable reputation and she comes from an honorable family. Do we know what that means? Some people come from, right? We really human, y'all. We human, right? Some people come from families that have bad reputations in our city, right? It doesn't mean she's bad or he's bad. It doesn't mean that the sister is a bad person. It doesn't mean that the brother is a bad person. But his family got a bad rep in the city. She comes from a family, they got a bad rep in the city, right? Everybody get the idea? Can you marry her? You can still marry her. Can you marry him, sister? You can still marry him. They say it's recommended that you choose a person who they come from a good family, a family with a good reputation. Tayyib. He says after that, number 3, dayyina. It's recommended that you choose a woman of deen, which could vary person to person because everybody's deen is not on the same level. Now, some people are deening. Some people, mashallah, are deen. So if a person, right, based on my level, right, I might look at the woman and she's better than me. She deening in my eyes. All right, or she looks at the man and the man is a stronger Muslim than she is. To her, he's deening, like he's a person of deen, right? Everybody's level is not the same. So what one man chooses as a woman of deen is not the same as the next man chooses as a person of deen, right? But when you choose, it should be a woman of deen. Ajnabiyya. It says ajnabiyya, which is an issue we don't really deal with. But Islamically, it says ajnabiyya, which means she should be foreign. She shouldn't be from a person's family, meaning a cousin. Because if we don't know, in Islam, cousins can marry in Islam. Even though we don't practice that, Islamically, if you go to the Muslim lands, you'll find that. So it says that she shouldn't be from the family. She should be a foreigner, meaning that person. Not why? What's the benefit? Why do they say you should stay away from that?
Internal conflict.
Uh-huh. How?
Because it would be an issue with both their families.
What's the issue?
They can argue, like one side would be upset with the other side because of that conflict.
Sorry.
I think because one of the benefits of marriage is you bring families together.
Mm.
And if you marry within the same family, it's not bringing them together.
It's possible that they're not really close like that, so you're bringing them together. They say that if they were to split, it could split families, internal conflict. If they divorce, now families are mad at each other, which would cause a split. That's the reason that they use for that. Clear? طيب. It says bikrin, that she should be a virgin. It's recommended that she's a virgin. طيب. The question comes, y'all. What's the hukum? What is the Islamic ruling on marrying a virgin? How would you answer that? Mashallah. It's recommended. It depends. Depends on what? طيب يلا خلاص. تفضل. تفضل.
Oh, the hadith of the Prophet when he was talking to, I can't remember which companion. He told him to go to his wife, or he said, or the companion was telling him how he got married. And he's like, she a virgin. And he said, no. He's like, why you didn't marry a virgin? So you didn't do her. She, like, basically sort of bond and the love was strong. He's like, he said, I have sisters. He said, my parents died, and basically I needed somebody to help me raise my sisters.
Right.
And the Prophet didn't reprimand him. It was kind of like, oh, all right, I understand. So that's why I said.
طيب, let me rephrase the question. What's the ruling on choosing a wife that's a virgin? Only foul, huh? It's recommended. That's what he said. All of these things he's mentioning now are recommended. Everything that he's mentioning, all these sifat now are recommended. Does she have to be a virgin? No, she don't have to be a virgin. Right? And if you choose a virgin, brother, you got to know how to deal with a virgin. Right? You got to know how to deal with a virgin. He says, number 6, waludin, that you should choose a woman who's able to have many children. Right? It's recommended. You say you're supposed to marry, as we say, you're supposed to marry a sister that can have kids. Right? Allah gives children to whom he chooses, and some Allah does not give children to. That's the reality. It's in Surah Al-Shura, I think. If you don't read Surah Al-Shura. Yes.
How do you know they got kids? How do you know?
MashaAllah. How do you know if the woman is able to bear children? Right? Let's say she's a virgin. Right? If she's a virgin, how would you know if she can have kids or not? Huh? Sisters, if a sister's a virgin, how would you know if she can have kids or not? Huh? I don't know. Maybe tripping. How would you know if she can have children or not? Realistically, her specifically, you wouldn't know. So how would you gauge it? There you are. They say, look at her family. They say, look at her family. Is her family a family? They come from a woman who bear a lot of children? That's the investigation we're supposed to be doing on people, y'all. We just be talking to people on Instagram for a couple of Johns, and then we meet like for 2 sit-downs and marry them. You got to investigate. Can she even have children? You want children. She tell you she can have children. Maybe she can't. Maybe she thinks she can, but she can't. You got this investigation, which is part of the next part. So the last part was that she should be meaning. It's recommended that she can have a lot of kids. right? She might not be able to have a lot of children, which doesn't mean a man can't marry. It doesn't mean he can't marry her, because those recommendations, those descriptions are all, what was the ruling on all of them? Recommended, right? It's not obligatory. She doesn't have to be a virgin in order to marry her, right? It doesn't have to be, it has to marry one woman. These are not obligations, but they say are recommended for the hadith and the other things surrounding it. You see how they don't bring any ayat and hadith? Because they've already considered it, the scholar who wrote the book. The scholar who wrote the book is already considering all of the ayat and hadith connected to it. So they're able to just formulate the simplest thing and give it to us. Allahu Akbar. Tayyib. Now it comes to the issue of looking at the woman that you propose to marry. You propose to a woman, you want to propose to marry a woman, right? It says, وَلِمُرِيدِ خِطْبَةٍ امْرَأَةٍ مَعَ الظَّنِّ إِجَابَةً نَظَرٌ إِلَى مَا يَظْهَرُ مِنْهَا غَالِبًا بِلَا خَلْوَةٍ. For the person who wants to propose to a woman, right? For the person, when can you look at a woman? This is assuming what, y'all? The woman sitting in front of you or standing in front of you, or whoever the sister you're talking about marrying, she can already see you. Right, sisters? Well, we got masks on now, but generally she can see who she's potentially, possibly going to marry. But it says that for the one that you want to marry, you're allowed to look at her. Right? You're allowed to look at her. It says, ma'adhanna ijaba. If the person, the man, because if the man has the it's a high possibility that she's going to marry me. Not just looking at all the women. You just come in here, sit down, check them out. Nah. With the expect that she's going to marry, that she's going to actually marry you, right? Assuming, y'all, this is assuming, because you got to understand, this is assuming because it's possible you already saw her, right? It's possible she saw him and he saw her clearly, right? It's possible. They work together. They pray at the same place. They pass each other all the time. They know they're familiar with each other. But say if they're familiar with each other, but she wears niqab, then he really doesn't know what she looks like, right? Should he marry her? Can he marry her Islamically? Can he marry her without ever seeing her? Yes, he can, right? Should he marry her without ever seeing her? Huh, sisters? No. Now, of course, y'all, the sister, she's already looking at the man. So she knows if he's attractive to her or not. The man doesn't know. The man doesn't know what he's in for. So therefore, it's legislated the look. When? It's highly possible. I think this is going to work. Because we want to go on a sit down, right? And I've heard this before. I heard a sister, she went on a sit down, she wears niqab, and she didn't want to show the brother her face. The first sit down. Is that a problem? He says yes. He says no. Huh? The first time, we never met. It's our first time meeting. She's a woman who wears niqab. Assuming, y'all, now we got to go to this while we're here. The sister wears niqab. To her, what is the Islamic ruling from these 5 on wearing niqab? Yes. If she feels that it's obligatory, that means that what? She's not taking that niqab off for you. You're a stranger. It's the first sit. I don't know you from a can of paint. Might not never see you again. And to her, wearing the niqab is obligatory. So she might come in there and not lift up her niqab, right? Until maybe a couple sit down, she say this might work. And they might go a little further. They might, right? And then she might, right? Eventually, he's going to need to see her. You're going to need to see her, man. You're going to need to see her. So if that's the case, because I heard it before, if that's the case, it's nothing to be alarmed about. Man, she ain't want to show her face. She ain't want to show her face. Right? If she believes it's obligatory, then she might not want to show her face in the first sit down. Because what if the person that's at the sit down, the brother, what if he's not really serious about getting married? What if he just wants to see, right? Peeking. What if he wants to do that? So if that's the case, If she doesn't wear niqab, then in general, he sees her. He meets with the wali. They have a sit down, whatever, as we call a sit down. We get to that. What is a sit down, right? They have a sit down. A general, he sees her. But let's just say, according to this, he doesn't see her. Or he didn't really, I ain't really see her that good. It was like from the side. She was in the car. I need to see like a real see, right? It says for the person who he thinks that she's going to accept the proposal of marriage. He's going to propose to her to marry. He thinks she's going to accept it. Then for him, he's allowed to see her. But see what? It says, مَا يَظْهَرُ مِنْهَا غَالِبًا بِلَا خَلْوَةٍ. He said he's allowed to see what is normally seen from her without them two being alone. Without them two being alone. So it ain't like they could just meet up somewhere on their own and then he could start looking her up and down. Like that's not, Islam doesn't allow that. That they're not allowed to be alone. They're not married, so they're not supposed to be alone anyway, right? Let alone if they're thinking about getting married, that they meet up somewhere on their own without a third party, without her wali or her wakil, right? She doesn't meet a man. You don't go meet a man, sister. It don't matter what he done told you. It doesn't matter what he told you. You're not supposed to be meeting men that you're thinking about marrying by yourself without your wali or your wakil. That is a recipe for destruction. That's going to backfire. Islamically, it's not appropriate. It's not correct. Khalwa is called khalwa, to be in privacy with a man who's not from your relatives, right? So it says, number one, that you can only see the things that are generally what is usually able to be seen from a woman. Number two, that they cannot be alone. طيب. And it says number three, in amina shahwa, as long as they don't think that's going to put some major desire in them, they're going to try to do something. We got to be like, we're not robots, y'all. We humans. You don't know the person you can ready to sit down with. You don't know their background. You don't know how many women he's dealt with. You don't know how many men she's dealt with. You don't know how attractive you are to her, and you don't know how attractive, vice versa, right? As we say, some women are drop dead gorgeous. And some men, I don't know how y'all describe them, right? Whatever y'all say, right? So some people, they see people and they're not able to control themselves. It's life. It's not, right? Some people can, some people can't. You don't put yourself in a position, you alone by yourself, you meet up with a person, you don't know it's really a stranger, and really he or she can't even control themselves when they look at people. They look at you. You might be the fitna for that person. Therefore, Islam gave us parameters to live by. And when we try to buck the system, right? When we try to do that, it always fails. And that's why when we get to the issue of the wali, for the brothers and the sisters, especially for the sisters, but the brothers, it's a responsibility of the brothers. The sisters got to understand the responsibility and the job of the wali in Islam. It's important because it saves us headache and heartache. It saves us a lot. Tayyib. He says, so you're able to see from that woman, ma yadhharu minha ghaliban. What are we able to see from the woman? Yes. The hands, the face. What'd you say? Oh, the head. The feet. The hair. They said, it says the wedge, the raqaba, around the neck area, right? The hands and the feet. Are feet important? Some people. We ain't getting into that, y'all. I'm just saying. To some people, feet is important, right? Some people it's not. Hands, some people they want to see your hands, right? Let's assume, y'all. Just assume, because in Islam, a woman to cover her face, her garment is long enough to cover her feet. She might have on gloves. Her abaya just might be big. You can't see her hands, right? A man, and at the same time, what she's looking at is pretty much the same thing, right? She can see everything that he would see. She can already see his. She can see his face. She can see his hands. She can see his feet, right? It's possible. This is real life. It's possible. Let's say, for example, you can't see her hands or you can't see her feet. She might have a scar on her hand that's unattractive to the man. She might have a scar on her foot. She might have a scar, right? He needs to see that before he commits to marry her, and then he marry her. And everybody clear? You see the benefit? Huh? Now, it doesn't mean that that scar is unattractive to all men. But the man sitting in front of you, he might mind, he might not mind. But one thing's for sure, she can already see his feet, right? Or his hands or his face. Yes.
So you said head, that's the whole head, right?
You said head.
No,
I said, oh, you who said hair? I said face. Wedge. Wedge is the face. Wedge. Yes, the face. We'll leave it there. Brother. Yeah, the face. Like, so she still got her scarf on. She still has her scarf on, but she might wear, like we used to say back in the day, like not like the nation. You know how the nation joint be in the back. It's not tied in the front. There's no pin in the front. It's not a shayla. It's not covering her neck. Her neck is exposed at that point. Who usually sees her like that? Her family. Her family usually sees her like that, right? According to them, her family usually sees her like that. Meaning foreign men that's not her family, usually don't see her like that. They don't see her neck. They don't see her neck. They usually don't see her face. They usually don't see her feet. That means usually all that's covered. Clear? Which shows, sisters, we supposed to be covered whether you married or not. Muslim women covering is not based on if you married or not married, sis. You do not just cover up because you want to marry him real bad and he only marries sisters who cover up like this. This is our deen. Our deen is for Allah. You cover up and do all that, and then he still don't marry you. Then what? We gonna take it back off? You gotta, we gotta ask ourselves, what is the Islamic ruling from these five on a Muslim woman covering? Right? Got a question? Or they just Tayyib. Fadla. Is it a question? Okay. Is it a question, sisters, or no?
Yes, it's a question.
Oh, Fadla.
This being recorded?
Yeah.
All right. So,
if you want to wait, you can wait if you want to wait.
Yeah, I'll write it down.
Okay, Tayyib. If y'all want to write them down, y'all can write them down and send them up. It's fine. Tayyib. The last part of this, it says, وَلَهُ نَظْرُ ذَلِكَ Tayyib. So those are the things to the woman he's proposing to marry. It's 4 things. They say the face, the neck area, the hands, and the feet. Tayyib. Nah, I ain't say it's ijma, Sheikh. If it's ijma, and if, really it's not mentioned here if it's ijma or not. But here, he might mention if it's ijma or not. Tayyib. He says, وَلَهُ نَظْرُ ذَلِكَ. Now, as far as his family members, then generally he can see those 4 areas also, right? Which is the face, the neck, the hand, the feet. He says, وَلَهُ نَظْرُ ذَلِكَ وَالرَّأْسِ, in the head of his family members. So she removes her scarf in front of her family members, not the brother that proposed to marry to her. Clear? This is important because sisters, the brother comes in there and he says, I need to see your hair. They think that they gotta, like, the brother come in, they just gotta do stuff. I don't know, I got daughters. You gotta teach your daughters what's allowed, what's not allowed. A man come in a room, a stranger tell you take your scarf off because I think I want to marry you. Like that, it doesn't Islam allow that. You understand? Tayyib. For the family is those 4. He says, Warats, also the head of the women in his family. They can see the hair, right? Wasaqin, when the wat al-maharimihi. It says also, somebody said the shin earlier, right? The shin area. Min the wat al-maharimihi. Wa min amatin. Tayyib. Everybody clear? Any questions? Is that clear? Tayyib. We're going to stop right there tonight, inshallah. Unless there's any questions y'all want to send up. Further.
You said like classical books?
Yes.
All classical books are written like that? Majority of them.
Fiqh books. We talking about books of fiqh.
All classical fiqh books are written like that.
Basically, yes. The classical books of fiqh, the older books of fiqh, or even if it's a modern day, the classical books are written, they're written in that order. The most important things which is number one section of ibadah, worship, salat, fat, all that is first. Shukran. All that's first. And then it moves to contracts, buying and selling. Oh, without the proof in the hadith. Well, that's based on the level of the book. All level ones generally are written like that. Even level twos. Level two might have a little shade, like even some level ones like might have one hadith every now and then. But we just did all of that, and they didn't mention no verse and not that there's no proof. There's proof for all of this. But you see how they didn't mention it? That's this book. Another book might mention one. After we did all, they might mention one hadith. Okay? So the first level is very basic. Not a lot of hadith and ayat.
Question.
Further.
Did you say that it was permissible for him to see her neck, like as a part of the things that he can see from her face, her hands, her feet, and then did you say her neck?
And her neck, yes. Those were the four things, the four areas.
But I don't understand it because because your neck has to be covered.
Say it again.
As a part of your hijab.
Say it again.
So I don't understand how your neck is permissible. So are you able to like flip your hijab to the back and see it? Because as a part of your hijab, your neck has to be covered. Right.
That's good. You see everybody understand what she's saying? This is why, when is the man allowed to see this? When, sister? Huh? When it's getting to the point where it look like they really gonna get married. Not the first time you go in there, you start taking your joint off and throwing it back like, look at me. You know what I'm saying? You with me? This is when it gets serious. When it gets serious, at this point, you got to figure you've pretty much seen him more than one time up close. You've seen his build, and in reality, if the woman is covered properly, it's going to be baggy enough that you can't really see what you're looking at. We're not talking about if you come in there with one of them tight abayas. Like, that's not Islamic hijab. That's I don't know what it is. It's not hijab. Hijab is to keep certain things from being exposed. We're not supposed. Khalas, that's enough. So anyway, at that point, when it gets to that point, those are one of the things that the scholars mentioned is allowed to say. If it was that she pulled her scarf back so he could see, then yes, at that point.
Can you elaborate on what are some signs regarding a high chance of marriage or high possibility? What are some signs that the sister should look for? Y'all sitting down for a while, right? Y'all been talking. Y'all, it's a process, right? She has a wali. As y'all go on, y'all talking, it's looking like, but as long as you sit with a person, either it's going to work or it ain't going to work. You can kind of feel when it's going to work and it's not going to work, right? Sisters, are sisters clear? A man doesn't come in there and demand to see something from you. Clear? He's allowed that. Lahu. It's allowed to do that. Lahu nadhar. Allowed. It's allowed for him to see something. It's not obligatory that you got to show him. You might not want to show him. You might not want to show him that. And if you don't want to show him that, he got two options. Either what? He accept that, or he say, no, I can't do that I can't marry you without at least seeing like your feet. He might say that, right? He might say, I can't marry you without at least, she wears niqab. I can't. She says, I don't want to show you my face. Is it obligatory? Is it permissible? They say it's allowed. Y'all think y'all gonna get married? It's allowed for him to see the face at that point. She might not want to show her face, except to her husband when she's married, right? The man might say, khalas, let's get married and marry her. He can. I wouldn't advise that, but if he did that, that's on him. Or he could say, I'm sorry, I gotta bow out. I can't marry a person that I've never seen before. It's no problem, but nobody's demanding anybody do anything.
Back to what Muhammad was saying as far as like signs, could you say signs is like a dowry being established, purchase, or like days for an academy and set up, stuff like that? Could you say those like signs of
the signs a dowry being purchased?
Like as far as signs of intention of like, be serious.
I don't want to put a specific, I would say it's from case to case. Some people sit with a sister and they go buy a dowry from the rep. Whenever she ready, I got this for her. So just because he bought a dowry don't mean that's going to work. You understand what I'm saying?
So you can't say, well, he bought the dowry, it must be real. No, in his mind, it might be real, but it might not be real. It's not, you know what I'm saying? So it's going to be based on their interactions over how many times they meet, sit down, discuss, talk with the family. Once they're going to be able to tell. And once it's getting real, because you know how yo, it's getting real. Oh, if it's getting real, you need to, have you seen it yet? No, I ain't seen it yet. Like, if it's getting real like that, you need to see it, right? When it gets there, which I can't really say Allahu A'lam when that is, but I would say it's case to case. When would it fall under if you want to know if the man is endowed or if the woman, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what this word means. If the man is endowed, I'm not sure what that means, sister. Endowed? Nah, or if the woman has a knife. Ugh. Oh, man. This is a good question. I'm not sure what endowed means, but for the woman, what does it mean? Come on, man. What? Hold on. What would it fall under if you want to know? Allah.
Speaking about the aura.
Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam.
Okay.
Allahu A'lam. How you? What you want to ask him? You ask him. I mean, that's not really like. But sisters, you gotta understand. You ask that type of question, the man, you're automatically placed into a category in the man's head. Understand that. You can ask whatever you want to ask, but understand, to men, y'all correct me from. Once you ask that type of question, sister, we place you in a category. It says, what would it fall under if you want to know if the man is endowed? I'm lunching. I'm the only one that don't know what that means. Everybody, or if the woman has a nice shape. Or if the woman has a nice shape. Those type of questions, number one, you need to be for way down the line in sit downs. That's not an introductory question. That's not an issue. You come in there and start talking like that. And if you do that, if you serious, because this is what we gotta understand, y'all, for real. You talking about getting married, or you talking about being married, like staying married? We can give any. It's easy to get married, and it's easy to be divorced in a week, if that's what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get married and be married and like establish a family and like be that's a different conversation. You understand? If you go to a man and ask him a question like that, especially early on, sisters, a question like that, right? That's going to place you in a category in a man's head. You don't want to be in that category. Not to say that you can't find out, but it's a time for everything. Play it. It's a time, and it's a way to find out. But you want to be as indiscreet and keep your haya, keep your shyness as much as possible. As much as possible. It don't mean you can't find out, but it's a way to do it. How to do it? Allahu A'lam. And when to do it, I'll tell you this, you don't do that early. That's down the line. You know what I'm saying? A woman has a nice shape. How to find out if a woman has a nice shape? Marry her. No, that's an issue, because it's a real issue. But I'm not saying don't ask the question. I'm saying there's a time for that question. There's a way to find out those questions without putting yourself in the light where somebody might look at you funny. At the end of the day, we Muslims, we got reputations that we protect. Islam encourages us to protect our reputations. You understand what I'm saying? So you don't want to do anything that's going to tarnish your reputation, right? That doesn't mean you can't find out. That means it's a way to go about doing it, right? It's a way, and it's a time for it. Now, for a man, I assume, in my opinion, this is my opinion now, I would assume for a man to find out the size of a woman might be a little easier if we're talking about these issues. Because a man, generally, a height and a weight means a certain type of body in general, right? If a height and a weight generally equals a certain type of body structure, generally, right? But that's not necessarily true for the man. Everybody with me? Is that fair? A person, a certain height, generally, if they weigh a certain height, if they're a certain height and they weigh a certain amount, generally that puts the body structure in a certain category, right? For a woman. before a man, if you're trying to find out like her body type and all that kind of stuff. But for a man, it's difficult to do that. It's a little more difficult. So the question from a sister to a man has to be a little more direct, right? Or am I tripping? Sahih? And Allah knows best. Any other questions? Further.
I want to go back regarding the head. So you mentioned that with the family.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you should go back and just go over that information again.
The 4 things it says what is usually seen from her, right? Which is they say the face, the neck, the yad, and the qadam, right? That's what you can see from the woman once with the conditions. They said what you think she's going to accept the proposal. It gets to that point, right? They says number 2, they're not alone when he sees these things, right? They're not alone. Even if you think they don't mean they can be alone, and she can start showing them stuff. It says number 3, in amina shahwa. Also, it's not assumed that if he sees her, he gonna start like, as we say, tripping. Like he gonna lose it. If he's by at this time, that's what shows you. By the time you've been like introducing yourself and getting to know each other, you should kind of be able to feel out with the help of the wali what type of person you're dealing with, right? The wali might say, no, I wouldn't show him that because he don't seem like he really has too much experience with women. And if you show him that, he might, I don't know what he gonna do. That's what your wali is for, sisters. He don't seem like, we men know, he don't seem like he really dealt with too many women. Maybe he's never been married, he's a virgin. I wouldn't show that to him, like that might be a problem, right? So they say if it is that, I'm in a shahwa, you don't want it to be any type of fitna on the man or vice versa, or on the woman, seeing the person. So those are for the person, the woman that's being proposed to. And he says they add on top of those, the family, the hair, and the shin. So for the family, 6 things they mentioned, and for the woman you're proposing to, 4 things. Any other questions? Sisters? That's it? Brothers? Father?
Yeah, just one more question. You said like on 3, it's that. You said not recommended, like a cousin.
Yeah. They said it's not recommended.
I'm not trying to argue, but I'm just saying like.
Well, you can argue.
Was like to say dad's cousin, and how we talking to a cousin.
Right.
But I'm saying, why would they say
Jay, good question. Why would they say it's not recommended if the Prophet ﷺ did it?
Because in that time, that was the practice of those people. Today, that's not a practice of the people.
It's not a practice of the people here.
People might-
It's not a practice of the people here. If you go somewhere else, yeah.
people might-
Yeah, the Muslim lands. No, he's saying that he's saying if the Prophet ﷺ married a cousin, then why would it, if it's allowed in Islam, why would they say you shouldn't do it? And this is important. If it's allowed in Islam, why would they say you shouldn't do it if it's allowed in Islam? Wisdom?
Like you said, it could split the family.
That's the reason they use. They say if the divorce comes, then it's possible it could cause a split in the family. That's what they say. Is that 100% going to happen? No. And this is why they say it's recommended. They're not saying you can't marry. They're saying it's recommended to stay away from that if you can. That's the reason they use. But the issue is if Islam allows something, right? It's possible because Islam allows it. It's possible that's not the best thing to do. Islam allows something doesn't mean it's the best thing to do for you. You understand? That's important to remember. Because something is sunnah, recommended, in this case, it might not be the best thing to do. And that's important to remember as we go further. Inshallah. Khalas. We'll continue next week with the proposal, how to propose to a woman. And is it allowed to propose to a woman who is married already? A woman is already married. Can you propose to a woman that's married? Yeah. We'll get through that next week, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.